Hey everyone! So today, the Canadian government made a significant announcement regarding its immigration levels plan for the next 3 years, specifically for 2025, 2026, and 2027. Every year, they outline the number of permanent residents they plan to accept, and, as many of you might have guessed, the targets for the upcoming years have seen a notable decrease. Yep, you heard that right. There's been a reduction of over 20% in the immigration quotas for permanent residents. But wait, that's not all. They've also included targets for temporary residents, like foreign workers and international students, and guess what? Those numbers have also dropped significantly. So, in this video, we're going to dive into the details of this immigration levels plan. And even with a decrease in the overall numbers, there's some silver lining for those of you already in Canada, whether you're international students or temporary workers. Your quotas are actually going up. Let's unpack this together. Overview of the Immigration Levels Plan. Each year, the Canadian government sets targets for how many permanent residents they aim to welcome over the next 3 years. Just last year, they announced a target of 500,000 for 2024. However, in today's announcement, they've reduced that target significantly. For 2025, it's been cut down by 21% to 395,000. And for 2026, it's been reduced by 24% to 380,000. By 2027, the target will be even lower, sitting at 365,000. If we rewind a bit, there was a time when we could have made a video saying Canada was planning to invite more than 1.1 million new residents over the next 3 years. But, given last year's projections of 1.5 million, it makes sense why we're seeing such a significant drop now. It's quite reflective of the current political climate and rising anti-immigration sentiment within the country. The Trudeau government is definitely aware of these sentiments, especially with elections coming up next year, so a reduction like this was somewhat expected. What's next? Now, this video is just a general overview of the numbers announced today. In future videos, we'll get into the nitty-gritty, like the specific categories and how they compare to what was announced last year. But, let's talk about the good news I mentioned earlier. Even though the overall immigration targets have gone down, the quotas for those already residing in Canada are on the rise. They anticipate that over 40% of permanent resident admissions in 2025 will come from international students and workers already here. That's definitely a positive twist. Breaking down the numbers. Let's break down that 395,000 figure a bit more. The government categorizes these targets into various streams, including economic, family, refugees, and protected persons. Interestingly, they've introduced a new section this year called In Canada Focus. This wasn't a part of last year's plan, and it essentially separates what was previously lumped together under the federal high-skilled category into 2 distinct parts: Federal Economic Priorities and In Canada Focus. If you total these 2 new categories, you'll find they account for over 124,000 spots. This is actually an increase from what was previously outlined. The In Canada Focus category is particularly important because it specifically aims to admit individuals from the Canadian Experience Class, CEC. This is great news for anyone currently in Canada who has been anxiously awaiting updates on their immigration status. Your chances may be looking better, especially with the potential for increased draws for the Canadian Experience Class in the coming year. Areas of reduction. Now, where exactly are we seeing reductions? Well, while some categories have seen increases, the most significant cuts have been made to the provincial nominee programs, PNP. Last year, the target for PNP was set at 120,000, but that number has now plummeted to just 55,000. This is a substantial hit for that stream. Additionally, there have been reductions in the family class as well. For 2025, the target has dropped from 95,000 down to 81,000, which is a bit concerning considering last year's projected rise from 114,000 to 118,000. In the refugees and protected persons category, the numbers have also been scaled back significantly, from over 70,000 down to 50,000. It's essential to note that while there are reductions in several areas, the government has highlighted some priority categories for 2025, like healthcare, trade occupations, and French language proficiency. However, 2 major categories seem to be missing from this year's focus: STEM and transport occupations. This could be a disappointment for those considering careers in those fields, as it appears they may not have as many opportunities until at least the end of 2025. Temporary residents. New targets introduced. Now, let's shift gears a bit to discuss temporary residence. For the first time, the government has announced specific targets for temporary residents, including international students and temporary foreign workers. The target for international students remains steady at about 306,000, but the numbers for temporary workers will fluctuate quite a bit over the next couple of years. Interestingly, the government plans to gradually reduce the share of temporary residents to 5% of the total Canadian population by the end of 2026. Right now, that percentage is about 6.5%, so these changes are part of a broader strategy to manage immigration levels more effectively. Alright, folks, that's a wrap for this video. As I mentioned earlier, this is just a preliminary overview of the announcements made today. We'll delve deeper into the specifics in the coming videos, and I'm excited to share more insights with you. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're interested in more updates on this topic, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for tuning in today, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for watching our video. Please hit the button and subscribe the channel.